Welcome to our live web chat from Best Buy. We're excited today to be talking about the launch of our corporate responsibility report, and I'm joined today by two of my colleagues and by Aman Singh, who is going to be our moderator. Aman was a former senior editor and in CSR and sustainability, has been a Forbes blogger, and is really interested in looking at how renewed energy in CSR connects to employees and customers, and also how we live it out in our everyday life. So we're excited to have him on here to help us moderate this web chat. In addition, I'm joined by Leo Rodis, who leads our environmental sustainability team here at Best Buy, and a colleague of mine who is the project manager and responsible for driving out our successful report this year, Hamlin Metzger. So we're going to start out by having the three of us just talk a little bit about reporting and why we think it's important. So I'm going to turn it over to Leo to talk a little bit about why reporting is important in the environmental sustainability world.
Yeah, for us that's pretty easy. It's because it drives performance and execution at retail. I mean, I think any of us who's worked in retail knows that for anything to work well, it's got to be embraced by the people in the stores, out in the field. So for us, the reporting, the sustainability report that we have that's visible to our employees, the data that we get out there to the public, it just keeps driving us to do better and better and better. And without that visibility, I think it's tough to get the performance we're looking for.
Hamlin.
All right. Well, I agree that it's incredibly important for stakeholders outside the company, but it's also incredibly valuable for us inside as a process. I think it's that one time a year that we get to take a look back at what we've accomplished in the past year and where we're heading in the next year, and really kind of recalibrate our program. So we're certainly interacting with all the teams that show up in the report throughout the year, but it's typically around initiatives or programs. So it's kind of that one chance to really look at our strategy again much more closely.
And I think Leo and Hamlin hit on the two most important things for me as well. I do think that it is also a chance for our executives to get a global view of how we're setting goals and how we're trying to work to achieve those goals. So it's getting excitement in our retail field is absolutely critical. And then also just that point in time when you get out and talk to all the teams, they're very excited about telling their story. So we're excited about the opportunity to help them tell their story. And then for the executives to see what we do.
So the topic for today's chat is primarily, our world connected. So I want to get into the meat of that. 4 main categories in the report. How did that process? What was that process? How did you come up with the 4 categories? Why was that the focus? And not, it could be any number of things. You guys are global, 180,000 employees, millions of consumers. How did that process work?
Millions of problems to be solved in the world today.
Of course.
We could be part of any of them. We probably are part of a lot of them. I think in the past we tried to look at a lot of different things, and we were doing a lot of different things. And about a year ago, we decided through our work with BSR, let's really focus on the things that are most important to our stakeholders and the most important to the success of the business. And so they helped us through a process they've used with other Fortune 500 companies called a materiality assessment. And that helped us to look at all of the critical issues for us. And while that map contains things we are absolutely committed to doing, it helped us really focus on the things where we felt like through the business that we operate and the assets that we have, we could make the most difference. Thoughts?
Yeah, I would also say that we spent a lot of time doing some benchmarking, looking at what's going on in the consumer electronics industry, what's going on at retail. We talked to a lot of experts outside the company and also worked a lot with our senior executives across the entire enterprise to understand their perspectives. And all of that helped us formulate the strategies that we've developed now.
Yeah, and on top of that, and Mary and BSR did a fantastic job of just bringing that all together. The debate at times was pretty vigorous, I would say.
It was.
Getting down to 4 focus areas out of, 60, 70 different things that were put out on the table wasn't easy. And it did take all that dialogue internally, externally, and then just hashing it out.
And I think, even though we're down to what we call 4 focus areas, if you look underneath the focus areas, you could throw a lot of things in there. So it's even getting more focus within the focus areas, and that's really the work that we're trying to do now.
So the report this year is targeted towards consumer education, consumer awareness. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I'll start with an excerpt from the report. This past year, we took customer research to a new level by forming a global consumer insights unit. This new team developed the award-winning Voice of the Customer through the Employee program that focuses on gaining insights through our employees. Can you guys expand on how that really works?
Remarkably, it really works exactly the way you just said, the way you just stated it. We have a process in place within our customer insights unit, and they have, all of our employees out there have the opportunity to send in information as they hear it from customers. So it is a real-time, real information through the eyes of our employees. So as they're out there talking to customers every day, and whether it's about a sustainability issue or just straight up about a Best Buy topic or something that they're hearing over and over again, they have the ability to send that information in. And then there's a small group of folks up here in our corporate headquarters that takes that information, culls through it, sees where the themes are, and brings that through to the organization. So it's pretty much as simple as that.
And I think it's incredibly critical for the company as well. So when you think about the fact that we're here to deliver technology solutions that meet the needs of our customers, understanding what they expect and what they want out of technology is paramount for us. So I think it's a fabulous program and really helps us drive our business.
You know, and just the philosophy behind that isn't new to Best Buy. If you think about why we started the recycling program, the Consumer Electronics Recycling Program about 3 years ago is when we really started investigating it. It was because consumers were telling us they needed a solution to recycle their old electronic stuff. And that's what really drove it. You know, it was just trying to figure out how we can satisfy that consumer demand. That came in through consumer research. And the research we continue to do about how we can optimize what we're doing continues to tell us that we need to do more and more recycling. So it's always been a part of our story. I think we have this added capability now that's talked about in the report, which is pretty strong. But the concept around it isn't new for us.
Is it being used efficiently by the employees?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We get a lot of input from the employees through Voce, but through a lot of other ways that we listen to employees as well. Brian's whiteboard, people write in all the time. We have an internal water cooler, which is an internal social network. People write in all the time about what's on their mind, about things that they're seeing in the store, about just about anything. So we have a lot of, and then we have more formal ways through a viewpoint, through employee satisfaction index that we do in the stores. So we actually have, I would say, a lot of ways to listen to our employees. And I think Voce was a way to capture specifically customer feedback from employees, so that we could cull through it, I think, in a more formal way, but to better understand it and then better use it within the organization.
So 2 questions to piggyback on what Leo said. One, buyback is relatively new for you guys. I recently bought this laptop from Best Buy, and I was offered that option. And I told them that I would get back to them in a week because it was new to me and I wanted to understand it better. Was that something that came through this whole feedback loop through the consumers?
Yeah, I would say it's one of several different things that we do to solve what we call the transition state for our consumers. So you presumably had an old computer and you're trying to get rid of it, replace it, and we hear from our consumers all the time. They're looking for help in that transition state. Buyback is a way to help people keep up with the latest technology. So it's sort of related to some of the things we're doing in terms of trade-in and recycling. And so I wouldn't say that we necessarily had this huge hue and cry to do a buyback program, but we continually hear from people that they want us to help them to upgrade more effectively, more economically, get rid of their old stuff, et cetera. It's all part of that transition need that people have. And for us, it just ties in really nicely together. The fact that it's a new experience for you is just a reflection of the fact that it is pretty new. And people are just getting their heads around it. I think what you can expect to see from us in the coming months is more talk around how this is an integrated solution for people. So you come into a store, you've got your old computer, you can recycle it, trust that we'll take care of it responsibly. And then if you want to make sure that you can upgrade as quickly as possible, we have options for that too. And all of that serves to bring more product back into the store.
Right.
So we can refurbish it, recycle it, make sure that you close that loop, and that's really the holy grail in product stewardship, is how do you close that loop? Buyback's another piece of that.
Another question that's related to that, not a lot of us think about recycling and power use and Energy Star when we're going out and buying our electronics. There's some of us that are educated enough and learn about this and want to keep up with it, but there's a significant part of the consumer population that just wants to go there, pick up something that's easy to use, intuitive, and get out of the store. How do you get that consumer base to understand your sustainability strategy and that your relationship doesn't end at a point of sale?
I think that's, again, I think that's one of the challenges we're gonna be looking at during this year. The group that's working on sustainable solutions is looking at, number one, how do we reliably communicate to customers the truth in this space? So greenwash it, we wanna stay away from greenwashing, we wanna make sure that whatever we put out there and however we coach customers is based on good science and reliably tells them that they're gonna actually have a more sustainable solution. And if you think about customers, you can think about our merchant team and buyers as well. We all need to get much more educated on what's real in this space, which is why we're members of things like the Sustainability Consortium, where we're working as an industry, we're working across industries actually, and then within our own consumer electronics industry, leading that sector group to find the most reliable measures and the real hotspots, and then integrating that into the messaging we have with customers. Today, we sell a lot of Energy Star product, and it's on our signage. Our employees have training that they can go on and learn how to talk to customers about those things. I think tomorrow we've got a lot more that we can communicate, but we want to make sure that it's really good science.
I think one of the other ways that we really engage customers around things like Energy Star is we talked about the fact that it not only has an environmental benefit, but an economic benefit as well for them. So when they start to understand how it impacts their lives, I think it really helps them connect with the product and connect with things like Energy Star.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up Energy Star because we absolutely love Energy Star for the simple reason that it cuts out a lot of the clutter around the conversation of what's greener, what's not, what's better, what's not. And Energy Star, it's by far the most recognizable brand out there when it comes to environmentally preferable products. We could do a better job of communicating that to our customers for sure. There are some places where we do it better and other places we can improve. What's really interesting about Energy Star is that we're not the only people who care about Energy Star because it helps us sell product. But energy utilities who are interested in reducing their energy demands, especially on the West Coast, they love working with us to help to drive the message out to consumers that this is a better value for you. You're going to save money at home, and you're also going to help the environment. So whenever we can get more people sending that message out beyond just what we're talking about in our stores, I think it's more effective.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing that we're doing internally to understand this better is doing more research. So through the Sustainability Consortium, understanding what are the hot buttons for customers, and one of the ones that comes up in our industry over and over again and just reinforces the end-of-life solutions that Leo was talking about is what do I do when I'm done?
Yeah.
So that takes me to the employee piece. To me, and I just want to add that we're all also chatting online. Please use the hashtag BBYCSRchat. If you have any questions, comments, we'll make sure if they're not answered today that they will be answered after this chat. And so the employee portion of the report is what really I enjoyed when I wrote the blog last week about the report. There's not a lot of reports out there that really make it a crucial aspect to make sure that employees are aware of all these efforts, understand how it affects them, and understand how they can contribute to that. So I just want to understand how you guys started or formulated the corporate responsibility scorecard, and what has the challenges of that been internally?
Well, it started with a recycling scorecard. So we wanted to let them know how much they were taking back. And that was a way for them to understand, are we getting a lot of recycling through our stores? So that we could sort of measure the success of the program store by store and and get better at the back end logistics, understand how much we were taking in different places. At the same time, we had gotten request after request from stores they wanted to understand, well, how are we impacting the community overall? What stories do we have, and what measures could we take out to the community to tell them, hey, we're here and we're in your community, and we're doing good through our community efforts, through our volunteerism as a store, through the grants that we're giving, but also we're making sure that we save energy in our store, that we are taking in a lot of recycling, and that we are selling a lot of Energy Star out to people so they're using less energy in their homes. So it was a small group of people that were passionate about getting the data into the data system that we already use. We didn't want to create something that was going to be an add-on or a bolt-on, because the stores have a lot to do every day. And so giving them something that was easy to use, that they were familiar with, and getting all that data into that system so they could pull it down just like they pull down their fiscal results, was the aim of that small team. And it was folks across the organization here at corporate who were passionate about it, working with teams in the field that they had been requesting this information for a while. So it's our first attempt to give them a view, and we've gotten some good feedback.
Yeah, and so I would just add on to that. Mary said that we had a recycling scorecard since we started the program, and it was basically on recognition of the fact that if you don't share the data and show people how they're performing, they can't improve. And Mary's right. I mean, it drives engagement. And what's interesting about the retail culture is that the general managers, I mean, they're there to run a business, and they're very, very focused on that, and that's about bringing in more sales and driving their costs down. They're also very competitive with other general managers across the entire fleet of stores. Friendly competition, but they care what their friendly competitors are doing. So, we can show them how much they're recycling versus somebody else in a similar market, and they can also see on the scorecard how much traffic they're generating, and then they can actually understand how much it's driving sales up. So the more integrated it is into the business, the more they're going to want to do it and promote it. On energy, we have a scorecard that takes into account a number of different variables that help people understand how they're doing relative to other similar stores. So if you're a general manager in Atlanta and you're trying to figure out how your energy use compares to somebody in New Orleans, similar climate, similar store size, and if you're spending a lot more on energy, it begs the question, well, why is that? So that, again, that friendly competition, seeing what other general managers are able to accomplish, drives the behavior that we want to see, which is reducing energy consumption, which reduces our carbon footprint.
One thing I want to say about the employees is they really are central to our sustainability strategy. So whether it's helping customers with recycling, whether it's connecting them with Energy Star product, or the fact that they're out empowering communities through volunteerism, it all comes back to the employee and what they're doing. And so, we want to have them in the strategy. We want to figure out how we can fit them in so that they feel empowered and inspired about what they're doing. When you think about who our customers and our employees are primarily that younger, 18 to 25, and they care about these things, and they want to work for a company that cares about these things. So I think it all fits really well together.
And just one last thing. The other thing that store managers are using the scorecard to do is to recognize people in their store. So if they can look at, who's out there doing things in the community, and then when they have their store meetings, they can call those people out. Because they know that by getting out into the community, you're cementing that emotional bond. So that Best Buy isn't just another store, it's the store that came out and helped at my local YMCA. So they have that ability to recognize good behavior.
So that brings me to the section of the report that's devoted to the inspired workforce. And we got a couple of questions from Twitter on that, and it fits perfectly for what I wanted to ask. Great job with the data display. You guys obviously have retention. Your goals and your targets are exemplary considering the industry you operate in. I've worked in retail for years while being in school, and you couldn't care less about retention. You're there for an hourly job, you're supporting yourself while going to school, you're going to leave. You don't see a long-term career. And that's a majority of the people who work in retail. And seeing 74% retention then is, for me, it's outstanding. But the diversity piece, the recruitment piece, 30% women, 12% African American, 14% Hispanic. What is the goal? What is the process? How are you guys thinking of, improving that aspect? Obviously, on the store level, I think diversity is a natural part of everywhere your stores are located. So I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I'll take a go and then you guys chime in. We started in an industry that was really focused on big stereos and vans with 8-track players. And if you go back to our roots, big stereo, that kind of mentality, that kind of culture was really kind of a guy thing at the time, 40 years ago. Things have changed, right, over time. Consumer electronics are purchased by everyone today, and a lot of them are being purchased by women. So we absolutely know that. The Hispanic market is growing. We have very vocal initiatives. One is the Wolf Program, which is our women's leadership forum at Best Buy.
And you were incredibly involved with that.
And I was involved in its beginnings, and it's come a long way since I left a couple years ago. But it's really focused on energizing our female employees in the store, and getting their ideas about how to reach out to female customers. So always focusing on their development, their professional development, but also their insights is really what we want to do. We've done the same thing. We have a team that's focused on the Hispanic market and really looking at what does that mean for us internally. So we're constantly trying to mirror what we see happening. But to get that change, it takes time, it takes an evolution, and a revolution sort of running simultaneously, and we're actively trying to do both.
Yeah.
So the Wolf Program, the Hispanic Program, all of our EBNs, I think they show up in there, are getting more and more use, not just here at corporate. We had a lot of EBNs that started here at corporate, and now they're in the field, and more chapters are forming all the time. So we know it's an area that we need to do more work. We're very aware of it, and we continue to have conversations, and some of them tough, around what we do.
I think you guys want to add to that?
Sure. I think there's great stories to tell about what we're doing in certain communities around diversity, and it has a lot to do with understanding the community in which you're operating. And there's examples of the Vietnamese community in Los Angeles, or the Polish community in Chicago, or Indian communities in New Jersey areas, that the stores have looked out in their community, understood what their needs and wants are, and really tried to create assortments around that, and go out and hire people from the community that can really relate to the customers who come in, and it makes a big difference, and really, again, creates that emotional bond between the store and the community, and also just improves just the relation that the store has with the customers.
And I can definitely vouch for that. I live in New Jersey, big Indian population, and in the last couple of years I've definitely seen more Indian faces in the employee population at Best Buy, so I can definitely vouch for that.
And a larger Bollywood segment.
Of course.
And I would say that our year-over-year results are showing improvement in the female area. We have more work to do.
So we're getting a lot of questions from Twitter, so I just want to switch gears just a little bit. One of them that we actually received from several people, and is probably in the back of our minds, is Global Compact and GRI. What is your opinion on using them as a common base for sustainability reporting?
I'm going to turn that over to Hamlin to talk to the GRI.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we really looked at what's out there in terms of a framework for reporting, and really thought the GRI is becoming kind of the global standard and the gold standard around reporting. It's growing immensely each year. I think the last couple of years, about 400 more companies are using the GRI year over year. And we understand that our report is used by stakeholders outside the company, and what they're looking for is the ability to compare reports both year over year and then across industry and within an industry. And we felt the GRI was the best way to accomplish that. And we want to, when we decided to go with the GRI, we really wanted to be consistent and stick with it. So that's where we've landed, and I feel like it's a great framework. It's continuing to develop. The GRI is working with companies to understand how reporting can be improved. And they're doing things like working with within industry segments and creating specific guidelines for certain industries. So I think they've got great momentum, and they're doing great work, and I think it's a good framework for Best Buy right now.
I totally agree. I think that GRI has included a lot of stakeholders in the conversations about how to report and what to report, and that can only help us, because we're reporting non-financial data, so we don't have GAAP, we don't
Right.
have FASB, and now I'm speaking in wonky accounting speak, but since we don't have that kind of guidance, the GRI is a great way to frame up the report, to decide how transparent you're going to be, to push the boundaries of transparency, to have the discussions internally about what we want to be, where we want to go with our transparency. So I feel like it's a really good multi-stakeholder process that has gotten them to where they are.
Another question, again from Twitter. What is your approach to curbing the use of conflict minerals with overseas suppliers? In that sector, it's hard to have goals. It's easier to have goals around the Millennium Development Goals, and there's just, like you said, there's millions of issues out there that you could align with.
Yeah.
So,
Well, this one we're going to have to, because there's going to be regulation that we're going to be working with. And so we've been working with multi-stakeholder groups through the extractives, staying connected to the extractives groups that's been working with the EICC and GESI. We're part of the GSCP, and through those contacts we have been talking to other peer companies through RELA and other industry groups. We've all been grappling with what does this mean for our industry, and what are the right steps to take, and how can we find a path to compliance that both complies with the law and doesn't actually do harm. So I think the industries that are affected, which goes well beyond consumer electronics, every industry that uses tin, right? We're all grappling with what does this mean in terms of supply chain. It's a tough question. So we're trying to approach it by getting involved in these multi-stakeholder dialogues, and then working internally to come up with our plan to comply with the law, but then to think beyond that, to think beyond how do we approach supply chain in a more holistic way, and how do we get more and more information down the supply chain. But I'll tell you, being the retailer and trying to get all the way to a mine in the Congo, it's a long, long road.
did you want to add anything to that, Theo?
No, I would just say that it's, I think, a symptom of a larger trend when it comes to people's concerns about sourcing of materials.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we can do as a large consumer electronics retailer is, again, to bring back this notion of closing the loop, is to get more product back in for recycling, so that we're doing more of the urban mining, and we have to rely less upon things that are mined from the ground. And I think that eventually there's going to be much more emphasis placed on where everything is coming from, and more expectations that we understand where the materials are coming from. And to the extent that we can actually reclaim metals that have already been extracted from the ground and put those back into products, I think that's going to reduce that level of risk and concern about how things are being manufactured.
So what is Best Buy doing to create an environment that advances the recently adopted UN guiding principles on business and human rights?
We, again, through our coalition involvement, we have had a very strong program in our exclusive brands group, looking at human rights in our supply chain. So we started when we started the exclusive brands work, and we've been refining that process over time, and the results are all in the report, so you can see them. We are very transparent about our findings, year over year improvement. We actually have quarterly calls with our team over there and with our global sourcing folks. So it used to be that it was more of a compliance, and we had a small team that was doing the audit, but sort of after the fact. Now they're very, very integrated with global supply, and our VP Gail Gibbs, who's in China, and her team sit on the calls. And we're becoming much more responsive, and moving toward more capability building than just an audit. When we started, we had a kind of a 3 strikes and you're out program. We found out quickly that that doesn't work. It doesn't build capacity. It doesn't build relationships with our suppliers. We also have, while we have more and more exclusive brand product going out every day, we have fewer suppliers because we've gotten on purpose about who we pick and how we partner. I don't know, Hamlin, I know Hamlin's been looking at this deeply
Sure.
recently.
Yeah, and to pick up on something you mentioned is, it's that having a smaller base of suppliers and having a longer relationship with them, and working on with them to improve their management systems and how they work with their employees, I think is critical in driving human rights in the supply chain. And to us, that social responsibility is equally as important as our environmental sustainability work, and that's why we do spend a lot of time working with multi-stakeholder organizations. So the Global Social Compliance Program, and looking at EICC as another organization. All of these are ways in which we can accomplish what we want to, and it's having an ethical supply chain.
And I think, if you look at the China, the new plan that they just put out, and you look at the worker shortages that are occurring in China, there's more pressure on the supply chain, and there's more pressure on our suppliers and our manufacturing partners to get on board and do the things that we've been working with them to do. So that's the good news for us. I think it continues to be a long road.
So the report then becomes sort of a binding process through all of this. Right? It's a culmination of a year's efforts. You bring it forward, you launch it, you show everyone who cares enough to read it, what you're doing. I mean, sustainability is a journey, we all know that, but intent is a goal, and I think that's what we're talking about right now. So one of the questions again from Twitter, and this one's from David Connor: as a huge retailer, how can Best Buy balance its role as a promoter of products against sustainability ethos?
We are a consumer culture. And people, it's interesting to watch, at least from my perspective, that consumer electronics used to be thought of as a discretionary spend, but now they're really integrated into people's lives. So people are going to continue to want the things that we sell, and they're going to use them in their lives. Leo was talking before about recycling. It's a great passage to closing the loop.
Yeah,
But how do you get people to make informed choices first? I mean, even for me, I go into a Best Buy, the first thing that hits you is choice.
Yep.
There's so many choices. How do you educate us to buy the right thing that is sustainable? Perhaps
it's extremely hard
Yeah.
to find the right thing.
Yeah.
And Mary talked about the Sustainability Consortium. That group of companies, which is a highly diverse group of companies, understands that this is an extraordinarily complex problem. It's going to take time. But that confusion is very real, and I don't know that we're yet able to help people wade through the muck as much as we'd like and to help arrive at a right answer. I think David's question may have had to do with overall, consumption and driving more consumption. I understand that. What's interesting about that from a consumer electronics perspective is that, one, the technology does seem to be getting smaller and smaller, which I think is a positive thing. And I also think that manufacturers and recyclers, again, I keep coming back to recycling, are getting better and better at helping us to consume differently. So if you're somebody in another part of the world and you want to be able to connect to the rest of the world and you want to get a smartphone and connect, there ought to be a more responsible way to do that than perhaps there was a few years ago. And part of that involves making sure that when that piece of technology is done being used, it's recycled responsibly, the material goes back into the system, and once again, the material that you're then purchasing anew is different from what it would have been a few years ago. So it's about consuming differently, not necessarily less, in the way it's traditionally thought of. So I think it's a complicated question, but Mary, you hit it on the head when you talk about Sustainability Consortium. I mean, I think that's just really diving deep into some fairly complex issues, and it's not always clear what's the right choice.
Yeah, life cycle assessment is not, a lot of people have been doing it for a long time. There are companies now that are trying to make it easier to do it, and when you see something like that gaining steam, we're headed somewhere. But the last thing we want to be known for is the company that's out there telling you what's sustainable and then finding out that we were completely wrong, right? And so we're taking one step at a time. But I think the other thing, the other good news about our industry in general is that a lot of our top tier vendors have very robust sustainability programs, and they're driving toward producing more sustainable products because they're hearing from customers, not all customers and not the majority of customers yet, but a good trend and a growing trend of customers that want to live more sustainably. And they may want to do it just because they don't want to spend the money on energy and they know it's getting more expensive. So it may be their pocketbook talking, it may be the environmental aspect of it talking. Whatever's talking, we'd like to see that trend continue to grow so that we can get more reliable information and really educate our customers.
Yeah, I mean, we think globally. I mean, you're having hundreds of millions of people in Asia that are going to start to adopt technology and come on board. So the fact that consumer electronics, the industry is continuing to grow.
Yeah.
And the work that we're doing through the Sustainability Consortium is going to help us communicate to our customers whether the product has recycled material in it, whether it's easily recycled, the energy efficiency, all of these things that are going to ultimately help consumers make better choices. And I think Best Buy can play a major role in helping educate consumers through that information and then again through our employees. So I think that's our opportunity.
So your report says that this year's report is aimed at consumers. What are some of the specific ways you plan on bridging this gap? Again, as a consumer, I wouldn't think of coming to Best Buy's website and looking for the report. So how do you integrate all this great work and progress that you are making into that conversation?
Well, I think one way is through this report we're educating our employees, and we provide additional training beyond the report that helps them relay those messages to our consumers. Beyond that, we're thinking about things about how do we get this kind of information on our commerce site. And it can be just a little message about some of the products that we carry and what is their energy efficiency rating and whether it's Energy Star compliant. So that's where we want to go with our sustainable solutions work is really getting to the consumer, educating the consumer, and helping them make decisions.
Yeah, I think as a retailer that sells lots of different brands, what we want to be able to do is provide choice. We want to match people with what they want and the solution that's going to work for them. So that means we want to inform them and arm them with the information to make the choice that they want to make ultimately. So it's gaining this information. It's working with these coalitions to get the real skinny on what's going on, and then getting that out there. And there are lots of ways that we do that today with everything else that we sell. I would expect us to use all of the same strategies in terms of signage, in terms of just educating customers, in terms of our commerce site. But we need to get the real information in order to move that forward. But that's part of the work of this year.
I mean, there's Hammond. You mentioned there's a lot of companies starting to do GRI reporting every year. You see new participants every year. And I asked you last week in our email chat on what you thought was the biggest advantage of putting this report out. It requires time, resources, cost. It's a big commitment to be that comprehensive. And you said it was internal innovation and discipline. And I'm just wondering if you can all expand on that just a little bit. What does that mean? And just to add to that, a question from Kevin Moss on Twitter. He says, the role of CSR reporting as an auditing tool versus an engagement tool.
Yeah. Just because of our culture, I think we've always looked at it more as an engagement tool. We wanted to get the message out to our customers and our employees about who we are and what we do. When I said innovation, I think by exploring what different teams are doing in the space of sustainability, it opens up possibilities that we wouldn't ordinarily talk about in our everyday business strategy. And by looking across the organization in a much more cross-functional fashion, we can see the creases and the gaps that might provide opportunity for us. So I don't think, oftentimes like innovation and discipline don't show up in the same sentence very often, but I think in this space it's a good balance of both, right? The discipline to to set goals and measure against those goals and do it every day with the opportunity to find the creases and find the opportunities that we wouldn't ordinarily see through our standard business process. That's kind of what I meant, expanding on the words that I use, and these guys might have a completely different
No,
perspective.
One thing I would mention is that one of the stakeholder groups that is out there using that report is research organizations who are providing information about companies to socially responsible investors. And some of those surveys are incredibly detailed and ask a lot of questions. And to me, that's a tool that helps us determine what shows up in the report and also what we want to go out and talk to teams about that we're interviewing for the report. So it definitely is, it's an education process. So we're looking outside and what's being expected, and then we can bring that in and either incorporate it or look at ways that we can start to implement something like that.
Nothing to add.
Really interesting question again from Twitter. Should we expect to see Best Buy actually targeting lowering the footprint of their customers?
You mean as an actual strategy? Yeah, I think we do some of that. I think quite frankly, we could do more. I think that where we tend to go after this a little bit is in our sales strategy around Energy Star products. And for the last few years at least, we've reported out how much we've helped people save in terms of the dollars they spend on the energy that they would consume through their products versus if they had not bought an Energy Star product. And we also talk about the carbon footprint or the lowered carbon footprint that represents. I think going beyond that is probably an area of opportunity for us, and it's a pretty dicey one. I think we even have to ask that question of ourselves. Right now, we track our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. We don't really do anything in Scope 3. So how we behave as a corporate enterprise in terms of our travel and our supply chains, I think we still have to figure that out better ourselves. And at the same time, I think we have opportunities to do that with our consumers. I don't have the magic bullet for that's a pretty big question. I think there are nuggets of opportunity there that we're exploring, but I think it's a pretty open field still.
Do you include vendors and suppliers in reporting on CSR targets?
You mean in terms of emissions?
This is a question from Robin. If you want to expand on that, we can.
If it's about carbon, no. Right now, so when I refer to Scope 1 and Scope 2, that's about the carbon emissions that result from either us directly generating carbon into the atmosphere or from the energy that we buy. So we have not yet gone to Scope 3, which is supply chain, vendors, et cetera. We're sort of thinking about that, and we're trying to figure out how to do that best, but we haven't gone there yet.
To what extent do your CSR programs include, and we've touched on this a little bit, but I think it's a good opportunity to expand on this, include employee philanthropy and volunteering?
Yeah, they have always included that. So we have a really creative program called our Tag Team Awards that allow our employees to go out and spend 40 hours of volunteer time, and then they have the opportunity to present the organization that they've been volunteering with $1,000 to use, and it's used extensively. We also have community grants that are held that the territories, the stores, the districts, and the territories have the money and have the opportunity to share that money. We do focus our philanthropy on teens primarily, and so a lot of the programs that they would look for are helping teens to have access to opportunities, and so we have a very long-standing ethos of employee engagement and involvement in philanthropy, and for a lot of that time, basically the store knew that they could do whatever they want in terms of outreach to their community. They could select the organizations they wanted to volunteer with. They could support things that mattered to them in their communities, and we've had those programs going for a long time.
Yeah, I think one of our greatest advantages in that space is the fact that we have 1,100 stores across the U.S. We are in so many different communities, and we had last year over 26,000 of our employees volunteer 160,000 hours. And the result was $3.2 million donated to nonprofits around the U.S. And to me, I think it's fantastic that it's dispersed like that. And it's the employees in each store living in those communities, understanding the needs of the communities, and then volunteering their time where they can make the most difference.
And we've talked primarily about our US operations here today, but that's true everywhere we operate. So the Canadian organization is out volunteering and doing wonderful things in their communities. They have the Take It Away program. Our Carphone Warehouse, joint venture with Carphone Warehouse, has a very robust program around calls and at-risk teens, and they raise a lot of money for the organization. They have volunteers that do work for the organization, and then they actually have a group that win a prize for raising the most money and volunteering, and that team then went this year, I think it was Ecuador,
Yeah.
and they built a science lab in a school there. And our Chinese 5-star brand has been out in the community doing things as well. So employee volunteerism, because they're in their community, just like Hamlin said, is really an important part of our strategy.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the Take It Away program up in Canada. It's a fantastic example of combining volunteerism and environmental awareness and philanthropy. So they work with schools, and this past year it was in Vancouver Market, and they encourage kids to go out and collect electronics for recycling. It's got an environmental education message to it. There's Geek Squads and Blue Shirts that are out volunteering in those events, and then ultimately Best Buy Canada then provides some philanthropic dollars to the school so that they can further integrate technology into the classroom.
And I don't want to miss the opportunity to talk a little bit about our Geek Squad Academy, which has been out doing summer work with kids, teens, and that is all volunteers. You don't have to necessarily be a geek, but you need to have some background in understanding the inner workings of the hardware and software. And this year we're in 30 markets with Geek Squad Academies.
I mean, I hear this a lot from companies. Volunteering is a part of almost every company's culture today. A lot of them make it a part of performance indicators as well. But there are certain employees who just want to go do their work, come back home. I've heard this expressed often enough that every workplace cannot be fun. Some people just want a 9-to-5 job and leave. So how is this working out internally? There's a Geek Squad Academy, there's a tag team that you mentioned, but I'm sure there's that percentage of population
that doesn't want to engage. Everybody has the opportunity to choose. So it isn't part of their performance whether or not they volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a high rate of volunteerism, though. And
Okay.
one of our values is have fun while being the best. So we sort of hope it's fun to work here. And we try to do everything we can to make it fun. I'm sure it isn't fun 100% of the time. I'm sure there are people who, are just coming in and punching the clock. I haven't met very many of them.
Yeah.
I don't know. We have a fun culture.
Do you get a lot of feedback or comments around this on your water cooler? You mentioned you have an internal social networking.
Yes, the water cooler.
The water cooler.
We get a lot of comments about everything.
Yeah.
You name it, they're talking about it, which is great, right? It's just another avenue to hear really what's going on and what's on people's minds. And without it, if you're not hearing it, you're just not listening.
So this was a question we received from Twitter yesterday on the role of social media. Brian Dunn, the CEO, has said this often, that he uses social media himself to engage with consumers and employees, and I think he's doing a marvelous job of that. But what role does it play in all the sustainability targets you have set with the employee education piece and also the consumer piece?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I'm looking at Leo because he's our resident tweeter.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I would say
you're more than we are. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, we've experimented with some things, and nothing's really taken root the way I think we'd like. So, a couple of years ago, we decided to create a special environmental Facebook account for Best Buy.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get that many followers, so we decided to just tie into the big ship. And we'll take in feedback, comments through Twitter, which helps us sort of understand what's happening out in the field. So if somebody's had a bad experience, I had somebody who tweeted our chief technology officer a couple months ago about a bad experience in New York where the store apparently wouldn't recycle something they had. So it helps us troubleshoot and do that sort of thing. I think as far as taking it to a strategic level, I'm open to suggestion for how we can do that. Like I said, we've experimented with some things, but nothing's really taken hold yet.
We did that experiment
For us.
on Earth Day a couple years
Yeah.
ago, not this past year, but the year before, where it was sort of a recycle it forward idea. So people would make commitments to recycle something, and then they'd send the message on to others. And it might be, recycling old ideas. So as we get more awareness, and we can maybe get it out there and try again.
And I would also mention 12th Force. So while it's not necessarily focused on sustainability, it is through Twitter. We're having conversations with our customers, and their questions are being answered by employees. And sustainability questions can certainly come through that, and they would be answered.
We have a question here from Twitter on packaging and displays in stores. What is the conversation around reducing packaging and color display cells versus plain Jane boxes?
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
Yes, it is. We can influence our vendors. The display, the packaging is a way to communicate what the product is all about. It's a marketing and media opportunity for the vendor to tell their story, right? So the box is
Often their
collateral,
story.
right?
Yeah.
It's collateral in the store. So going to them and saying just put it in a box is would be a tough sell. It would also limit how customers learn, because there's not going to be someone standing next to you all the time being able to describe what's in that brown box. So consumers, and I would say I'm one of them, I go up and I look at the box and I turn it around and I read everything that's on it when I'm making a purchase. Are there better ways to do that? I'm sure there are. In terms of packaging, what we know, what we found in consumer insights is that what our consumers are telling us is what they really hate is the plastic. They hate the clamshells. It isn't always the environmental message as to why they hate it, they just hate getting into it. Like, you can hurt yourself.
The clunkiness often.
So our exclusive brands team really took a look at that and came up with some innovative new ways to package. In fact, we had cables that had absolutely no packaging whatsoever, just a wraparound, and that was it. So we have been experimenting within our exclusive brands business around packaging for a while. I think that there's going to be more and more trends to reduce more and more packaging. It just takes bulk out of shipment. There are all kinds of good things about the trend toward less packaging, but we have to find that right balance between what consumers need to be able to see and understand about the product, what vendors need to be able to promote their product, and what we'd like customers to see, and what makes the most sense. Plastic, though, that's an easy one.
Yeah, and our exclusive brands team did some great work last year. They eliminated 1,600 tons of plastic out of the packaging of our products. And to Mary's point, there's all sorts of benefits from, you're just using less resources to begin with.
Yeah.
You're able to ship more efficiently. You're able to have more products on the shelf in the stores so that you're not out of stock more often. And all of those benefits are something that we would hope to continue to pursue.
Do you see yourself in the future taking a stand on something like this, though?
Taking a stand.
Moving beyond the exclusive brands that you're talking about, sometimes businesses have a gut feeling that, we need to fix this, and if it's going to take educating our entire supply chain and vendors, it's going to be our long-term challenge.
I think our supply chain and vendors are pretty aware.
Yeah.
Because it costs them a lot of money to ship.
Mm-hmm.
So they really have been for a while on the road to reducing packaging. But I think there's always the opportunity to have more dialogue with them. We have long-term relationships with a lot of top-tier vendors. So
Yeah.
our approach is more to work with them than to do the kind of hardcore push it at them.
Mm-hmm.
I think you make a lot more progress by having the dialogue, so it's a matter of just having that dialogue.
The relationship between customer satisfaction and employee satisfaction. Is there a connection, first of all? Second of all, selling thousands of different brands and items. How does that come together?
You know, when we think about Best Buy, being one of the last big box retailer that you walk into expecting to interact with an employee, that customer-employee relationship is so critical to our success. And one thing we know is that when employees are engaged and satisfied, that they're having better conversations, better relationships with customers, which has an impact on our business. And so we track both employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction very closely. And we understand that there is a correlation. And that's something that we want to continue to create an environment in which employees can feel engaged and can feel empowered, and to us that makes a huge difference in our business.
And you'll see in this report and in prior reports, we measure viewpoint, which is work that we did with Gallup and have been doing for the entire 8 years that I've been here, where we measure employee viewpoint, and there are indicators in there that talk specifically to engagement, and Gallup has done the work behind it to correlate that to sales. So you can see when a store has a high engagement score, they generally are doing well financially as well. So there is a direct correlation that Gallup has worked with us on to show the correlation. Intuitively, I think we all know it. You know, you walk into a store that the employees are there and they're engaged and they're having a good time, not just with each other, but with their customers. They want to be successful because they know the more successful they are, the more they get to work, the more their store grows, the more it feeds on itself. So you can feel it when you walk into a store.
I have another great question here from Tim Moen. How can a retailer help move the electronics industry forward?
Well, I can talk about a piece of that, and again, it goes back to recycling. We collect more electronics than any other retailer in the U.S. And what we've seen over the course of the 2 years that we've done this is that we've helped to develop the industry. So the recycling partners we work with are getting much more efficient. They're investing in new technologies. They're getting more profitable, and their costs are coming down. Everybody benefits from that.
Yeah.
We're seeing an increased level of engagement on the issue of recycling from manufacturers across the board. And it's not just because of what we do, but we think we played a significant role just because of the scale that we have. We get calls from electronics manufacturers asking us for advice on how to deal with certain recycling issues. Again, it's because of the experience that we've had as a retailer, engaging with the customer, building this network that's working pretty well. So I think it depends on the situation. That's just one example where I think we've had a pretty decent impact, and I expect it to grow over the coming years.
I was going to say, I think it relates to a lot of what we've talked about earlier, and that's having the voice of the customer show up through the interactions that we have every day. Literally hundreds of thousands of customers are in our stores talking to our employees about what they expect from technology, what they want technology to do for their lives. And that's something that is unique to a retailer. So a lot of the companies in the consumer electronics space, they don't have that luxury of interacting with customers like that on a daily basis. And so the better we can do at gathering that information, that knowledge, and kind of filtering it back up through the electronics industry, I think that's how we'll definitely help move it forward.
Yeah, and I think, Hamlin mentioned people are coming into our stores every day. We're going to their homes. They're on the phone with us. We have a lot of ways that we connect with customers every day, and but I think it harkens back to something you asked earlier. What is our role in helping to give consumers more information so that their choices drive the industry?
And how do you take it a step further? How do you engage them on that information? How do you make it a two-way?
Consumers or advisors?
Consumers.
I think that, as we mentioned before, I think that's work that we have to do. When you go into the store and you're looking for your PC, probably not you. Probably you might have asked the questions. But a lot of people are in and, they've got a certain amount of time. They're in that frame of mind where they're shopping. They want to get that purchase made. They're excited about the purchase. We have a limited amount of opportunity to really engage them in a discussion about sustainability. So how we choose to do that and the different ways that we approach them and get it out, I think, Hamlin mentioned going online and giving people more information on our website in that kind of way.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting to me because I think a significant portion of us do our research before going to buy something. And so to be able to get our attention on the website or, you know, on the internet before we decide. Is there anything, is that something in the future, or is that something being developed?
Definitely something we're looking at.
Okay. Interesting.
You know, I'll mention a couple of ways that we've interacted with customers. We've had a couple of products that have been produced under, one is a Blue Label line and another is Best in Class. And those were products that were designed specifically based on consumer feedback and customer input. And it was Best Buy working with some of the brands in the consumer electronics space, doing focus groups, gathering information in multiple ways, surveys. We have something called Best Buy Exchange, which is online, in which you can go and you can provide feedback on products and services at Best Buy. All of this information was kind of gathered and shared with some of the manufacturers, and we actually designed products based on that feedback and put them out in the market. So we absolutely are trying to hear and listen to our customers and give them what they want.
So I'm going to take one more question from Twitter, and this one is from Marcus Chung. How do you balance CSR communications with other marketing messages? It's a dicey tug of war we all play.
Yeah, the way that we have been trying to bring this forward is in a, you know, we put out our report every year. We have put out press releases when we're doing things, when we're getting involved in things. We're trying to walk that line because in this space, I think it has to just be really authentic. At the same time, you've mentioned, and many questions have come in about how we influence the customers.
Yeah.
One way to influence the customers through marketing. Marketing, you know, is there for a reason, and it drives people into our stores every day, because customers want to know, right? So the other thing that we're seeing is that more and more customers want to understand, how are you showing up in your community? What are you doing to be more environmentally sustainable? So, you know, we're learning our way through how we marry the two, and how much effort we put in each area, and how we make sure that it is authentic and our communication is really real. It's like you mentioned, it's kind of a tightrope. But our marketing message about Best Buy, a lot of them have been about product, so people want to understand what's new and what's the latest and what's going on out there. And then we advertise about kind of who we are. I think, you know, that is an opportunity for us as we look at marketing. Other companies have been more aggressive in marketing their community programs and other things. We have tended to not do that. So I guess we'll see how it develops.
Two final questions. We're getting close to wrapping up here. One, what is the purpose of hosting this chat? This is something new you guys have done this year. Thank you so much for inviting me. I've really enjoyed this. I hope everyone listening and watching us has gotten something out of this. But what is the purpose? Where do you go from here?
We go back to work. We have a lot to do. You read the report? We have a lot going on. No, I think this gives us, it's a moment in time. It's an opportunity for us to share in a different way the report. We keep calling it a report, but we're trying really to make it an online experience, right? We'd like to have this be the first of maybe quarterly chats where we talk about our progress, where we get to hear questions from people outside of ourselves, right? So the questions today provoke and give us more opportunity to have dialogue internally. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I just think it's one more opportunity for us to connect with people outside the company and even inside the company who are interested in knowing where we're heading on our sustainability journey. And, you know, there's opportunities for us through things like Twitter, through other kind of outlets in social media. We certainly put out the report. Our website is now updated. Our sustainability website previously had been very static. This year it's changed. We'll be updating that on a more regular basis. So these are all just ways that we are trying to reach out and share a message with people who are interested in hearing what we're doing and having a conversation.
It's just about more transparency. You know, you can only go so far with a static report or even on an online report. You know, people want to be able to ask questions and engage, and put us a little bit on the hot seat to answer some tough questions. You can't do that without actually having a conversation.
So final question, what can we expect for next year from the report? Or from a redesigned website experience?
Boy, we're just recovering.
There's
It's
no
hard.
time, there's no time.
We gotta start up again. I think one of the first things that we're really trying to do is to articulate more aspirational goals and more tactical goals. So looking across the work and saying, where do we have goals set today? Have we expressed them outside the organization? Where do we need more goals? Because when you set a goal, you've got somewhere to go, and it just moves everything forward. So I think you'll see us setting more goals this year, and being more transparent with the goals. I don't know, do you want to talk about the online experience?
Sure. Well, I was also going to mention the fact that we're a global company, and I think what we want to have is a report that reflects what's going on across the enterprise. A lot of it is focused on the U.S. That's where a lot of our programs have started. But each year we do our best to expand and really include more of the enterprise. The other thing is we're a tech company. We have a start now with our website, really providing a lot more information than it has in the past. I see us continuing to go down that path, making it more interactive, having it have more media, video, just ways to your point earlier about having opportunities for stakeholders to interact with us, ask questions, and provide comments. So that's where I'm hoping to see the website go.
Any final thoughts?
No, nothing to add. I think it's well said.
But we're gonna take a week off, though.
Not me. So.
Not true, it's not true. Well, I just want to thank you all for doing this. I think it's been an incredible opportunity for everyone who tuned in to ask questions. I think we've managed to hit most of the questions. If we haven't, please continue to send them to us. Use the hashtag BBYCSRchat. We will attempt to get them answered as quickly as possible. The answers might go up as a blog or in other forms of communication that we'll continue to let you know. But thank you everyone for tuning in, and any final words, Mary? And
No, just thanks for everyone who tuned in, and thank you so much for moderating.
Yeah.
and
of course.
My colleagues for fielding questions.
Thanks guys for putting them on the hot seat.